Welcome back to another episode of the Coaster101 podcast. I'm Andrew Stillwell, joined by Eric Woolley. Eric, how's it going?
Not bad. How are you, Andrew?
I'm good. And this week we are joined by the godfather of Coaster One himself, John Stevenson. John, how are you?
Hey guys, I'm doing pretty well. How about y'all?
Doing well. Going to start this episode with a little housekeeping this week, and it may take some time to catch on, but we hope you're going to enjoy it as much as we do. There's a new way to interact with Coaster101.com through this podcast and probably Instagram as well. It'll make it even easier to find articles on the site that we mention. What I need you to do right now, if you're listening to this podcast, is stop what you're doing, pull out your cell phone. You may be listening to the podcast on your phone. But pull out your phone, do whatever you need to do to add a contact and add this phone number, and I'm going to read it very slowly. 419-742-2101. And again, that's 419-742-2101. And if you can look at a phone number, that's C101 at the end. Throughout podcasts and probably Instagram, we're going to mention keywords for you to text to that number, and that will automatically reply with a link to an article on Coaster 101 that we're talking about. It'll give some more context, some more detail, and it's a lot easier than just trying to navigate the site.
Don't text and drive. Also, don't stop what you're doing if you happen to be driving while listening to this episode. Pull over safely and send a text.
That's fair. But it's easier to do that than to navigate the site. And I guess technically we should mention that standard messaging and data rates apply. But a big shout out to our friends at Udemy, which is a tech startup in Cincinnati, for helping out with this. And be sure to check them out at ulimidoes.com. That's ULIMI does.com. Now that we've got that out of the way, we've got a listener question this week, and it's actually from my brother JT. And he wants to know, what is the longest you've ever waited for a ride? And John, since you're not on the podcast as much, we'll start with you.
Oh, gosh. I honestly can't think of one specifically. I know Lightning Rod at Dollywood I waited probably over 2 hours for once. Yeah, I can't think of one that stands out as more than the others. I've definitely waited 2 hours for some, but I can't think of one that off the top of my head that I've waited significantly longer for. Maybe something at Disney World, maybe Soarin', 3 hours perhaps, that jumps out, but it's been quite a while.
Good Lord. 3 hours for Soarin'?
Yeah. Hey,
just ride Living with the Land 10 times. Yeah, probably more than 10 times.
Yeah.
Eric, what about you?
Yeah, I don't I've always been pretty impatient, so I don't if I see a ride that has a line that is insanely long, I won't bother. I will go ride Living with the Land 10 times. I think off the top of my head, my guess is I went to Universal Studios Hollywood once. It was on New Year's Eve, somewhere around New Year's Eve, because I happened to be in Los Angeles for the Rose Bowl. I forget which one now. One of the ones that Stanford went to in the early 2010s. Universal Studios Hollywood is packed around New Year's Eve, and I feel like we waited for Jurassic Park for probably around 2 hours. And that's probably close to the max that I've ever waited for a ride. But
wow.
I was with friends who had never been before, and it was warm that day. And Jurassic Park was probably the best ride there, arguably, at least back then.
That was a strong flex from Stanford's multiple Rose Bowls. I'm a little jealous, but it's okay. For me, the answer, I remember this very well just because I've never waited that long for anything ever, but I waited for Superman Ultimate Flight at Six Flags Over Georgia in 2008. I waited 2.5 hours through 2 breakdowns, and I honestly, having ridden that ride in other iterations, I wouldn't do it again. But I had never been on a flying coaster before. And I didn't really know any better about waiting in line, how long things take to get fixed when they're breaking down. But I waited through the first breakdown. It was fine. And then we got all the way down to the bottom of the station, which it has stairs to get up to the main level where the ride loads. And it broke down again. And we were at that point, we were at the mindset, we've made it this far. We are not going back. So we waited, another hour at that point, and the train got stuck in the brake run. So finally, 2.5 hours later, it was good. It was a very good experience. I love the B&M flying coasters. I would never, ever wait for another roller coaster for 2.5 hours. I'm sorry. It's, you see the stories now of people waiting like 6 and 7 hours for Hagrid at Universal on its opening day. And, God forbid what the Velocicoaster is going to do. But even at Disney World, which we're going to talk about this week, I know Seven Dwarfs Mine Train is another one that gets just crazy, crazy long lines. But if you know enough about the park, you can navigate in such a way that you can either ride it first thing in the morning, or you can ride it late at night and you won't wait as long. So, like I said, 2.5 hours, I will never do that again. But it made for a good story.
So it sounds like the real takeaway from this is that none of us like waiting in lines enough to tolerate doing it for a ride.
We're snobby roller coaster bloggers, and we do not like waiting in line. But this week, as I mentioned a little bit ago, we're going to do one of the most polarizing things you can possibly do as a roller coaster focused podcast. And that's going to be talk about Disney. And just because, there are a million Disney podcasts, just like there are a million other theme park podcasts. So not necessarily you need the crossover. But John actually just returned from his family trip to Disney that was postponed from the start of the COVID pandemic. So John, let's bring you in. What were your main takeaways from your trip?
So main takeaways, like you said, we were, just for some background, we were scheduled to leave for a week in Orlando the day before the parks announced that they were closing. So, we had been planning for well over a year and had everything lined up. And so that was pretty devastating, obviously paled in comparison to the hardships and just what, so many have had to deal with this year. So I'm very, very thankful that was the biggest, that was our major loss. But so anyway, so we had already bought the tickets. We had already invested a lot of money in the trip, and some of that we were able to recuperate. But a lot of that, with the Disney tickets, they were not refundable, but you could apply the value towards future purchase if they weren't used by the cutoff date, which I think is in December, if memory serves me correctly. So anyway, so we were able to kind of cobble together this abbreviated trip, and really we're not sure if it was going to happen up until a few weeks ago. So not a lot of planning. I sort of just, I thought to myself, well, we've already lost this trip once, what's losing it again. So I did not do a ton of planning. I'll full disclosure, did not, and really, honestly, there's not much planning you can do right now with this much that's changing from day to day. And, everything has kind of been turned on its side. There are no guidebooks. There are no, there are some websites that have posted guides, since the parks reopened, but the Disney World that opened in July is vastly different from the Disney World that is open in October. And so you really have to go in and understand that any research that you do is very subject to change. I'll get into this later, but we had a change at our hotel that happened halfway through our 4 days. Did all 4 parks in 4 days. And so main takeaways are, I felt very safe there. Did not from the moment we stepped into the hotel. Even flying was great. We flew Southwest and was very impressed with the airport, very impressed with the flight. Got to, Ubers were mask on. Got there to the resort. I felt very safe there from the moment we landed to the moment we took off, and really, really impressed with how Disney has enforced face mask. I mean, I was really surprised. They won't even let you take pictures with mask off. So, which was not the case at some of the other parks I've been to this summer. So, unless you are seated or standing and eating or drinking, your mask has to stay on. And I mean, there were signs everywhere reminding you that if you don't wear the mask, then you will be asked to leave the park. And cast members were walking around. I saw several, remind guests to pull up to wear their mask correctly, even if it was just below your nose. So I think I saw, aside from, eating or drinking, I think I saw just a handful of people not wearing their mask correctly. So the queue lines were socially distanced for the most part. There are these, and I guess this was with their not being fast pass right now. I mean, the lines did get fairly long, and because of social distancing, they have kept that, just because of the length of maintaining 6 feet apart, and they've kind of kept people out of the switchback queues inside. And so I guess that was one of the more challenges, just considering the climate, was a lot of these queues were moved out into the open. And so and they were somewhat organized, somewhat not organized. There would be a cast member standing at the end of the line holding a sign up saying, frozen line starts here, and they would just kind of snake throughout the park in different areas, or they would snake just right in front of the ride. And so it got pretty hot, standing outside in the middle of the day for an hour. But I'd much rather be standing outside than, crammed inside a queue. And I guess too, another takeaway is that you have to go in and realize this is not going to be a typical Disney trip. There's a lot of attractions, restaurants, shops that are closed. There are just subtle things, some subtle, some not so subtle, that you will kind of pick up on. Still a lot of fun. Obviously, it's Disney World, so the cast members were so friendly, and I think you could just tell that they were grateful for you to be there. And so it was, but I think they did a good job of making what is a very unfortunate, unprecedented situation, making the best of it. If someone asks me, should I go to Disney World, and they've never been before, I would say probably not. That's just my opinion. I think it's definitely not. It's not the Disney World that I would want someone that to be their first impression. So, but overall, I felt very safe, had a lot of fun. So yeah, it was. I'm very, very grateful that we were finally able to do the trip, even if it was a little different and a little abbreviated.
John, so you mentioned a little bit the resort. So you guys stayed at the Swan this time, right?
Yeah.
Right next to Disney Springs. Did you spend? What was how much stuff was open in Disney Springs? Did you spend time there? I mean, I think of the last time I went. Disney Springs is basically that's where I went to go to dinner and go to bars after being in the park. Did that feel more normal, or did that feel less normal than the parks relative to how they were before?
Yeah, so this was my first time to Disney Springs, and I'd never been to downtown Disney. And I guess I should say it's been about over 10 years now since I've last been to Disney World. And so a lot had changed, COVID aside. But so yeah, since actually the park's hours are pretty reduced. And so I think the latest a park was open was Magic Kingdom, and it was open until 8. Animal Kingdom closed at 5, and I think Epcot and Hollywood Studios both closed at 7. So we went to Disney Springs every night and had dinner there, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. That we actually went there the first night, so that was kind of my first exposure to poor choice of words, but that was my first time being around crowds at Disney World. And so it was again, the mask enforcement there was great. You had security officers walking around, police. I mean, it was crowded. I will say that when I first walked in, I was kind of a little overwhelmed, but if I didn't know there was, aside from the face mask, the place looked just to be at normal capacity as far as what everything was open. I didn't notice anything that was closed. The only places that I noticed were closed were either, being worked on for something new. To me, it was everything seemed busy, and just from trying to get reservations was tricky. So I really enjoyed it, and we had a lot of great meals there.
Did you get to go to the Guy Fieri chicken restaurant?
No, we did not. We ate across from it the last night, and that was one of my. That was one of my. I had heard things about it, and I like chicken, so I was bummed we didn't get to make it there.
That's a bummer.
Yeah,
that's John's big regret.
Yeah, that's it.
Now, John, I mean, you and I are a lot alike. You're a big planner when it comes to parks, and you mentioned you threw about a year's worth of planning into your Disney trip that got canceled in March. Going into Disney, like we're especially on the East Coast, Eric, I know you're a Fast Pass Plus skeptic, but it requires some advanced planning. What was it like planning a Disney trip, but not having to actually plan anything except really where you're going to have dinner at night?
Yeah, it was. I mean, in some regards, it honestly kind of it took some of the stress away from it, because I knew there was only so much that I could do. So, I mean, really what we did the night before was just look and see what was open and kind of have a plan of action of what we wanted to ride and what order. I mean, I kind of, in a way, I liked that stress was not in the equation of having to have every single thing scheduled. I am a planner, and so it was a little challenging just to kind of take my mind away from that to kind of pivot to a different mindset. But I did like that the playing field was kind of evened out a little bit. We're all in this big line together, and aside from disability people with the disability passes, we're all in the same line, and so it was okay. It was okay.
I think John's becoming a convert to my point of view that the needing to plan everything 3 months out for Disney World is stressful.
Yeah. Oh, it is. I much preferred Max Pass last summer when I went to Disneyland. I was like, I feel like that's definitely we could have a whole episode about that, because it's stressful. I mean, it is stressful planning for Disney, and even once you get there, it's stressful. Depending on how much of a planner you are, and with this crowd as it is, you pretty much have to, and it's definitely kind of takes some of the fun away from it, I think. But
yeah, it's I went back and I went to Walt Disney World in February, and I again it was a well planned and advanced trip. Had all the fast passes I wanted to, with the exception of I think one, and I managed to wait in line for that one. So it was interesting. I can't, I've been to Disney a bunch, and I'm trained to the method that you have to plan in advance. Otherwise, you're not going to get to want to do what you want to do, and that's just kind of my nature in a theme park. And I guess kind of talking about that is the way, in this quote unquote new world that we live in, I'm wondering if like Disney would ever just kind of get rid of Fast Pass altogether, but we'll see what happens, I guess.
I was, and honestly, like I really did not know we were going to go until 2 or 3 weeks ago, for sure. I hadn't researched really how, in my mind, they were using virtual queues for everything. I don't know why I thought that. I just assumed it. And so I was really surprised when aside from Rise of the Resistance, you're literally waiting in line. There's no virtual queue. That I don't think, and two, with the capacity being reduced, that affects things as well. So I think that it was, I keep going back to that. I think they were doing the best that they can, but I definitely missed, that virtual wait system.
Another thing I want to talk about and ask you, like, I don't know what your plans were for March, but when I go to Disney, I always like to get a park hopper ticket, just because you can start your day in one park, you get in with a nighttime show, you can bounce back and forth, you can take the monorail or the Skyline or wherever you need to go.
You can go eat at Epcot where the food is better.
Yeah, absolutely. But right now, obviously, Disney is still required to make reservations, right?
Yes. Yeah. Park reservations. Yep.
And it's only one park per day, unless you're on some sort of very expensive VIP tour that we don't really have in the Coaster 101 budget. Were you guys, when you were going in March, were you planning to park hop? And then when you couldn't park hop, if you were planning on it, did you think it changed the way you approached the day any way?
Yeah, so we're big Epcot fans, and so a lot of times when we, in years past, when we've been, we'll do the parks during the day, and especially a park like Hollywood Studios or Animal Kingdom, which was and still very much is, especially Animal Kingdom, a half day park. We would go back to Epcot and have dinner reservations there. So yeah, that was definitely a change, and for us, I think it was still. Um, we still left around the same time just because we did have dinner reservations and the parks were closing, we're operating at reduced hours. And actually our Uber driver on the way out yesterday brought up a good point that I hadn't really thought of. But I guess the one good thing about the lack of park hopping is that, the parks the park that you're at that day, if you can stick it out and stay as, to 5 or 6 o'clock, then the park's going to thin out a lot and it's not going to be replaced by people who are park hopping. So I didn't really see that much because at Hollywood Studios and Animal Kingdom, both the big attractions there, like Slinky um, and Flight of Passage, had pretty long waits up until the very end. But at Animal Kingdom, on Everest, I got 3 rides in with about 10 minute wait each time. So, the parks definitely thin out towards the end of the day. So I guess that's one positive of the lack of park hopping. But yeah, it would have been nice to be able to go back to Hollywood Studios every day and try my luck at getting a Rise of the Resistance boarding pass. So.
Yeah, let's talk the elephant in the room. I know
Yeah.
it's John, you had one day at Hollywood Studios, and if you've been following us on Twitter, you saw John's tweet that was looking for the support group for those who did not get a Rise of the Resistance boarding pass. Do you feel that it was the reduced capacity of the park plus the reduced capacity of the ride itself that kind of makes it near impossible to get a boarding pass right now?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
and yes, and yes. And it's weird because it is so kind of shrouded in secrecy what their system is, and how there's no telling what kind of algorithm or um, just mechanism is in place. And it really is like winning the lottery. And I had done, this is one thing that I did do a good bit of research about, and I wanted to make sure I was doing everything right. And we were in the Slinky Dog station right as it was about to turn 10 to 10, so we got to wait kind of off to the side with some other crazy fanatics and wait for the 10 o'clock mark to begin to start frantically refreshing. And I did everything right. I read all the guides. I had someone else look up time.gov to make sure that the time was right. I wasn't connected to the Wi-Fi. I was standing away from crowds. I made sure my cell signal was strong. I started refreshing at 9:59. it's just so wild to see people to go and just it's like a lottery, and you'll be in this group of people and some people will get it. You'll just hear these like, celebrations and sadness and people screaming, and it's just such a bizarre sight to see and to experience. It was something I was very anxious about and very much bummed about when I didn't get it. So it was.
I think it's one of the things that's I sympathize and empathize since the first day that I tried to get one back in February. I failed and luckily managed to get one the next day I was at Disneyland. I don't know if either of you follow at Thrill Data on Twitter, but they basically have a bunch of like data of wait times and stuff at parks, including they've always had things about Rise of the Resistance boarding groups. And what's weird to me is I wonder if it's that the boarding groups, they're reducing the number of people in each boarding group, because I think the number of boarding groups that have been getting on seems similar to what it was before the pandemic. So I'm wondering if they have they cut the capacity of each group in by 50% or something. So it's just hard to get into them. Although you'd also think I feel like with no park hopping and reduced capacity in the park, that there would be fewer people trying to get on. Like, it would seem like, okay, if the park has only 25% capacity, then the boarding groups also had 25% capacity and the same number of people to get on. I guess the worst part is that you don't get a second chance now. You can't go back the next day and try and do it.
Well, John, I know Eric and I have both ridden it, and I'm not riding it. I'm not going to rub that in your face.
Are we going to do our spoiler cast right now, Andrew?
Yeah, this is going to be John. So you start in this. This. No, we're not going to do that.
Oh, I went home and I went.
Jabba the Hutt eats you at one point.
We went back to the hotel room and I was so upset. I just watched the POV on YouTube. I just got a giant jug of ice cream and just had myself a good cry and watched it over and over.
But there were a bunch of rides that you had never been on because it'd been a while since you'd been to Disney. Any of particular highlights of the new to you rides that you got on?
I love Seven Dwarfs. I think that was just such a beautiful ride. I mean, you look at it and you would just assume it's been there since Magic Kingdom opened. So that was new to me.
Was the indoor and covered queue part of Seven Dwarfs open? Because I remember that of it's a very interactive queue. Do you still get to stand in front of all the interactive things?
So yes, it's the indoor queue is open. No, as far as I could tell, all the interactive elements were turned off because there were random stickers I think they were like, please don't touch or something. So it wasn't very clear that it was an interactive. There were interactive elements there, but it was still just the queue was beautiful. Now it was actually a little bit longer of a wait, but that's because it closed halfway for a cleaning. So, but I love that the outside part kind of stretched around the perimeter of the coaster, so I got to watch it in action for a while, and I just really, really enjoyed it.
Did you get in the ride vehicle and start swaying and swinging your cart?
No, we did get front row though, so that was
nice.
fun. Oh, there you go. But yeah, the swaying. I mean, it was just such a cool little ride. So yeah, that was new. Slinky Dog Dash was new as well. That was fun. Not quite as immersive as Seven Dwarfs, but still fun. Love Toy Story Land.
Another queue that's really good because it's has a bunch of little Toy Story Easter eggs in it.
So we actually skipped. We ran into a friend of mine from my hometown who's a cast member, and so she actually was able to walk us to the front of the line, which was very, very cool and a great consolation prize for
flex.
That and Toy Story.
Way to bury that after complaining about not getting on Rise of the Resistance. I got to skip the line for Slinky Dog.
I got that, and then as I was in line waiting we were in the station is when I did not get into a boarding group, so it was kind of a bittersweet moment, but very, very, very awesome to get to pretty much walk on to that. And then we did Toy Story Mania, which I had not done previously. And I love how they incorporated it into, they kind of reversed the entrance, and so that it could be incorporated into Toy Story Land. So I love Toy Story Land. I love that. I love that IP. It was one of my first movies I saw in theater, so it was very, very cool to see that. What else was new? Of course, Galaxy's Edge. I mean, even though Rise of the Resistance, I did not get on it. Just the land itself was, I mean, just breathtaking. It's one of those things, and I say this all the time about Disney, and it's very cliche, but pictures don't do it justice. And just being able to walk around, even though it was very crowded, it was still just kind of, I was just walking around with my mouth open. I love Blue Milk. That was amazing.
Yeah,
Smuggler's Run.
I think that also needs its own episode to argue about.
It seems very polarizing, but I loved it. It tasted like, y'all remember the rocket ship popsicles as a kid? Like the red, white, and blue ones. Yeah. So I told people it tasted like the blue part of that, like the melted blue part of a firecracker popsicle. Anyway, Smuggler's Run was fun. It was weird being in, socially distanced, so I was, you with only, only your party, unless you have a party of 6, like you'll have a little bit of choice. I was the pilot. I was not a good pilot at all. So that was
pilot is the most fun and the best.
Yeah.
Can confirm. I was an engineer the one time I rode it. That is the least fun.
Yeah, so that was still fun. Glad we got to do that. Let's see what else was new. So we did Frozen Ever After at Epcot. That was I'm still a devoted Maelstrom fan. So I was I'm not a fan of the Frozen. I wasn't a fan of the movie. I'm sure that.
How long did you wait for the ride?
It was posted at 95 minutes. We waited less than an hour, and I walked and got margaritas, so that made the wait go by a lot faster.
Nice. That's another. Is a good article by Nick on the website about how that ride works. If anyone wants to go check it out, search Frozen on Coaster101.
Yeah, so
unless Andrew has a text keyword for that.
Andrew will have a text keyword for Frozen.
Text Frozen to the number that Andrew mentioned earlier.
Yeah, text Frozen to 419-742-2101, and the article will pop right up for you.
Avatar, was that? Had you been on Avatar before?
No, I had not. Thank you, Avatar. Pandora was also it was just incredible. It was absolutely the land itself was incredible. Flight of Passage, of course, was just immersive. I called it Soarin' on steroids. It was it was all of it. It was so well done. The Navi River journey was I really, really like that. I mean, it was just so well done. Just so immersive, and I like Avatar, and it was very, very cool.
Sorry, did you say you liked the Navi River journey?
I did, yeah. I know.
Very, all right. We're going to need to have a long... All right, another separate episode. I thought we could do just one on Flight of Passage. We'll also need to do one about the Navi River journey.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So listeners expect 3 months worth of Disney World content where we argue with John coming up.
I know. It's a hot take. I'm sure I have plenty more to share. So,
and you did mention the how Flight of Passage was very immersive, and to continue the trend of plugging things we've written on the website, Nick has a very well-written article from 2018 that talks about why Avatar is so immersive, and you can find that by texting the keyword Avatar to 419-742-2101.
John, the other one that you're, of all of us, the only one who's been on was Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway.
Yes.
Without getting into any spoilers, because since it was open for a day before the parks closed, and now everything has been open only during a pandemic, no spoilers, but just how was it?
Oh my gosh, it was amazing. And this was another ride that I hadn't done a lot of research. I hadn't researched that much beforehand. And I had no idea it was a trackless ride system. I mean, I kind of knew, but I didn't know just how trackless it was going to be. And so we got in the very front row, and you're kind of like seated behind the engine of this train. And I was like, yeah, front row. And then I look at it and I'm like, well, this isn't the greatest view. And then if and I don't want to spoil too much, but as soon as the ride starts, do not worry about your sight lines and not having the best view. I mean, it was such a fun ride. I mean, I think definitely probably my favorite new to me ride um, uh, from the trip. And maybe it was because I just had absolutely no expectations of what it was going to be. But it was so fun, so well done. It was too short. I wish it was, I could have spent a whole hour just going on it again and again. It was awesome. Amazing.
How was the wait for that? Because I remember at least when it opened briefly before the pandemic, they were doing a virtual queue for it as well. Was this just a wait in line?
It was a wait in line, wait outside in the plaza where the giant sorcerer's hat used to be. It was very hot. It was at the end of the day, I was just ready to go. And, but I'm so glad that I waited for it. It was,
how long was the wait?
It was over an hour, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, it was definitely longer, but it was very, very much worth the wait.
Cool.
As far as we talked about the things that are new to you. I mean, did you get on your favorites? I know you mentioned the 3 rides on Expedition Everest, but I mean, did you play the hits? Did you get on Jungle Cruise? Did you get on Haunted Mansion?
No and no. So Magic Kingdom was probably not the most strategic of the day, so I did not do Jungle Cruise or Haunted Mansion. Because I did wait. I wanted to do Splash, so that was over an hour. So Seven Dwarfs was about an hour. So that the day went by pretty quickly, and we had dinner reservations at Disney Springs, so we didn't stay all the way up until 8. So it was yeah, that was rough not getting those. But being in Disneyland last summer, I had done both Haunted Mansion and Pirates. So I kind of went into this knowing you're not going to ride everything. You have to lower your expectations. Like for me this week, I was just so happy to be there that it was okay not riding on. Literally just walking around Disney was more than enough for me. So aside from Rise of the Resistance, there weren't and Slinky and Seven Dwarfs because I wanted the credits. Beyond that though, I kind of went in knowing you're not gonna be able to do it all this trip.
And I guess you touched on this briefly earlier, but if someone were planning their very first Disney trip, or they're a seasoned Disney veteran, they go once every year or couple of years, would you recommend a trip to Walt Disney World right now?
Yeah, if this is your first time going, I would say I would not recommend it. Of course, a day at Disney World is going to be better than a day of sitting at home, but there was just this. It was very much so Disney. Don't get me wrong. It was fun. Again, the cast members, I mean, everyone, that the customer service was just, just as great as it always is. But it just kind of felt like it just wasn't all there. Like it's someone who is, who is very tired and just isn't on their game. And a lot of that is out of their control. They, operating indoor theater shows right now is just not in the equation. It doesn't make sense with reduced capacity to operate every restaurant and food stand and every shop. I mean, they, like I said, they're doing, I think, the best that they can do. And I'm glad that they are still keeping the capacity lowered, even though I think the governor is allowing them to reopen, or is trying to get them to reopen at full capacity. So if you've been before and you are able to kind of understand going in that this isn't going to be your typical Disney trip, then I would say yes, go. And I think part of the reason that we went too is we want to support these the people, the friends that we know who work there. I mean, they are going, you're helping support them and giving them your business. So I think in that regard, if you're comfortable going and you've been before and you're in general good health, then I say go for it. And you're still going to have a fun time. You're still going to get to go on your favorite rides and attractions. The food is great. They're still doing a lot for Halloween. Obviously it's an abbreviated version, but there are decorations around, and a lot of the restaurants are serving limited time offerings, themed to the season. So it's good. I would say if you've been before and you are willing to, have a little bit of a different experience, then yes, definitely go.
Well, that'll do it for this week's episode of the Coaster 101 podcast. John, we appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Best of luck with your self-quarantining. I know you said
if you go, be responsible like John and quarantine after you get home, so that you
I know that's
don't make all your coworkers sick.
Yeah, I know that's not possible for everyone, but if it is, I'm gonna be laying low for the next couple of weeks and hopefully get a test as well. So just, do mitigate as much as you can if you do go, and wear a face mask. Encourage other people to wear a face mask, whether you're at Disney World or at the grocery store. Just that's my plug. Such a small act of kindness to those around you. So wear a face mask.
Got it. Well, if you've been following the website or our social media at all, you'll know that our annual calendars are now on sale. They feature 14 parks this year. It's a 13-month calendar. They're $15. There's a lot of number symmetry here. Available on our website. You can text calendar to 419-742-2101. The best part about these calendars, and we do them every year, we donate 100% of the net proceeds to Give Kids the World Village. Great organization. We love supporting them. So check out the calendar. If you're also looking for more holiday gifts for people, we're starting to get into that season, and we've got our own merch. You can check that out at c101.co/shirts or text merch to 419-742-2101. It's designed by Kyle, who is a writer on the site. Kyle is an extremely talented graphic artist. So check those out. As always, be sure to follow us on all social media. We're at Coaster101, wherever you consume your social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Shane still hasn't posted a TikTok video, so when he comes back on the podcast, we'll probably razz him about that a little bit. Feel free to email us at podcast@coaster101.com with any comments, questions, concerns, thoughts about Disney World in a pandemic. Whatever you want to do, really. We're open. We got a really good email the other day from somebody who enjoyed our park guides, so that will those will continue, which is good. Be sure to like, rate, and review us wherever you get your podcasts if they have that ability. I know iTunes, it'll help more people listen to the show and find us, so please do that. Force your friends to listen on long car rides. As always, thanks to JM Music Design for our theme music. We will talk to you all next week.